Devotions. I'm Laura. Apologies for this being a bit late. I have just been in bed. Sorry. So today's reading comes from Exodus chapter 14, and it's going to start at verse 19. Exodus is quite near the beginning of your Bible if you're looking for it. So, then the angel of God, who had been travelling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind it. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to the one side and light to the other. So neither went near all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove back the sea from a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters divided, so there was a wall of water on the right and a wall on the left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and clouds at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of the chariots, so they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from these Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them and against us." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back into its place. The Egyptians were fleeing towards it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and the horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites. No one survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and a wall on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw a mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people put their trust in the Lord and in Moses, his servant. I don't know about you, but reading that today is a little bit awkward. On the one hand, I really want God to click his fingers and make an end to this whole pandemic. It would be great, wouldn't it, if tomorrow we got up and it had suddenly just ended. The virus had vanished, mutated, gone. And I think we can pray for that. We can definitely pray for an end to this suffering. But I also know that this might turn out to be a bit more of a drawn-out affair. The Israelites had been through a torrid time. They'd been in Egypt, they'd been there for ages, they'd suffered real hardship. And then God had sought to rescue them through a series of plagues. And the plagues, on one hand, sound, fantastical. But then if you imagine being there, even if you were an Israelite, they would be pretty miserable to see. And so this story of this Bible reading has come on the back of several Bible readings building up to this, if you've been doing the daily prayer and the full daily prayer. And I wonder what anyone thought of it. There in the midst of suffering, whether you were an Israelite or an Egyptian, you would have just wanted it to come to an end. And when you look at how the Israelites were during this time, it's quite fascinating. They were totally erratic. One day they were up praising the Lord, and one day they were down moaning in the soil. God was brilliant, then God was awful. People were brilliant and people were awful. They were on a complete emotional roller coaster. And I think that's probably true for us in this lockdown period. And so don't be afraid if that's you. Today when I look out the window, the sky is blue, there's a little blackbird pecking around my garden, and things look quite hopeful, don't they? Yesterday, things felt really unhopeful to me, just the combination of things that were going on. The key line in this passage comes right at the end. The people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. And as Christians today, there are several things we can do. One, we can pray. The 24/7 Prayer Network has launched an initiative called 714, asking people to pray at 7:14 in the morning and the evening to turn our hearts to God, humble ourselves and pray for his guidance and the ending of this virus. And I think as many of us who can should join that initiative. We are also called just to endure. And as we endure, all we can do is fear the Lord, look after our neighbour, and put our trust not in Moses, but in God's ultimate servant, in the high priest, in Emmanuel, Jesus Christ. We know that God will lead us through this. We know that Jesus has gone before us. He walks in this with us. We know a God of love who wraps his arms around us and holds us tight. And so throughout today, I urge you to fear the Lord and put your trust in his servant, Jesus. He lights